The wedding ceremony lasted exactly 12 minutes. Stood in her dress uniform, medals gleaming under the cold lights of the ceremonial hall, and spoke the required words without emotion. Across from her, the human named repeated his own vows in a quiet voice that barely carried past the first row of witnesses. When it was done, they did not kiss. They did not even touch hands. Simply turned and walked away, her boots clicking against the marble floor, while followed 3 steps behind as protocol demanded. This was duty, nothing more. Was the daughter of High Admiral, one of the most powerful in the Confederation military. She had graduated top of her class at the War Academy. She commanded her own battle group at an age when most officers still flew patrol routes. Her future was bright, limitless, destined for the highest ranks of Imperial command. And now, because of politics she barely understood, she was married to a human cargo pilot who smelled of engine grease and recycled air. The Empire had ruled the Galactic Confederation for 600 years. 300 star systems bowed to their military might. Dozens of species served under authority, and among them, humans ranked near the bottom. They were useful for manual labor, adequate at technical work, but lacking the physical strength and mental discipline that marked superior species. Everyone knew this. It was simply fact. But lately, humans in the outer colonies had been causing problems. Protests, work stoppages, whispers of rebellion that High Command found annoying rather than threatening, but annoying enough to require a response. The solution was elegant in its simplicity: show benevolence. Demonstrate that the Empire valued all its subjects equally. Arrange marriages between high-ranking and humans to prove that species barriers meant nothing under Imperial law. Had been chosen for this honor. Her father had delivered the news personally in his office overlooking the capital city's spires. "It will advance your career," he had said, not quite meeting her eyes. "The Council appreciates officers who make sacrifices for stability. 2 years of marriage, then a quiet annulment. You will be a captain by 30. So here she was, walking through her family estate with a human trailing behind her, trying not to think about what her fellow officers would say, trying not to imagine the whispers that would follow her through every corridor and briefing room, trying to convince herself that 2 years would pass quickly. She stopped at a door in the service wing, keyed in her access code, and gestured inside. "These are your quarters. You will maintain the household transport fleet. The maintenance schedules are on the terminal. You will take your meals in the service dining hall. You will not enter the main house without specific permission. Do you understand?" Looked at the small room, then back at her. His face revealed nothing. "I understand." Good, turned to leave, then paused. "And stay out of my way. We are married on paper only. Nothing about this arrangement requires us to actually know each other." "Yes, Commander," he said, and there was something in his tone she could not quite identify. Not resentment, not fear, just acceptance. She left him there and tried to forget about him. The first month passed without incident. Returned to her duties at Fleet Command, spending long hours reviewing battle simulations and tactical reports. The Confederation was at peace, but peace never lasted, and good officers stayed prepared. She attended strategic planning sessions, led combat drills, and slowly rebuilt her reputation among her peers. Some officers made subtle jokes about her pet human, but most were professional enough to keep such thoughts private. Ignored it all and focused on her work. At home, she rarely saw. He kept to his assigned areas, maintained her ships with quiet efficiency, and never once tried to speak with her beyond the minimal courtesies required. This was exactly what wanted. She had no interest in learning about his life before the marriage, his thoughts, his feelings. He was a duty assignment, nothing more. But then she began to notice small things. Her personal shuttle, which she used for daily commutes to Fleet Command, suddenly ran smoother than it ever had. The navigation systems responded faster. The power distribution was optimized beyond factory specifications. When she mentioned it to her pilot, a young named, he shrugged. "The human made some modifications last week. I approve them because they checked out on diagnostic tests. The ship runs better now. Frowned but said nothing. A week later, her tactical display at home started showing enhanced threat analysis features that were not part of the standard software package. The new algorithms could process battlefield data 17% faster than before. She traced the modifications back to access codes. He had upgraded her entire home network without being asked, without seeking permission, just done it. She should have been angry at the unauthorized access. Instead, she found herself curious. The third incident happened during a formal banquet at the governor's palace. Had been required to attend with her husband, another political performance to show imperial unity. Had stood silently beside her throughout the evening, wearing the simple formal clothes provided to human spouses, saying nothing while officers discussed military campaigns and political maneuverings. Then Commander, drunk on imported wine, had noticed standing there. Commander had said, his voice too loud, carrying across the banquet hall, "Is it true what they say, that your human can actually read? I heard he has books, military theory even." He laughed, and several other officers joined in. What does a cargo pilot need with strategy books? Perhaps he dreams of commanding a fleet. The room filled with laughter, felt her face heat with embarrassment and anger. This was exactly what she had feared. This was why she had tried to keep separate from her professional life. She expected to look down, to show the submission that humans usually displayed when confronted by superior species. Instead, he simply turned his head and looked directly at Commander. Said nothing, did not speak a single word, but something in his eyes, in the absolutely calm way he held the drunk officer's gaze, made stop laughing. The entire room went quiet. It lasted only a few seconds, but in that brief moment saw something she had not expected. Was not afraid, not even a little bit. Looked away first, muttering something about getting more wine, and the conversation moved on, but kept watching her husband throughout the rest of the evening, really watching him for the first time since the wedding ceremony. That night, she accessed the personnel file that had been provided with transfer to her household. She had never bothered to read it before. Now she opened it and started going through the details. Had not always been a cargo pilot. Before that, he had been a navigation specialist on deep space survey ships. Before that, a technical consultant for colony construction projects. Before that, a student at one of Earth's universities studying physics and military history. His academic records were impressive. His work evaluations were all rated excellent. And buried deep in the file, barely a footnote, was a single line nodding that had scored in the 99th percentile on the Imperial Tactical Aptitude Assessment, higher than any human on record. Higher than most. Closed the file and sat in the darkness of her office, thinking. She had been married to this human for 43 days and knew absolutely nothing about him. She had assumed he was like all the others of his species, adequate, useful, forgettable. She was beginning to suspect she had been very, very wrong. The alarm pulled from sleep at 400 hours. Not the standard morning wake-up call, but the emergency combat signal that every military officer dreaded. She was dressed and moving toward her command center within 90 seconds, her mind already shifting into operational mode. The house computer was displaying urgent messages from Fleet Command, each one tagged with the highest priority encryption. The had returned. For 300 years, they had been silent. Ancient records spoke of a hive mind species that had once threatened the entire galaxy before mysteriously withdrawing to deep space. Most modern scholars believed they had gone extinct or moved beyond Confederation borders. A few paranoid strategists had warned they were simply waiting. The paranoid strategists had been correct. Reached her command center and activated the main display. The tactical map showed chaos. Red markers indicated bioships flooding through the defense line, one of the Confederation's most heavily fortified frontier zones. 47 vessels had already been destroyed in the first 2 hours of fighting. The enemy fleet numbered in the hundreds and was growing as more ships emerged from previously unknown jump points. Her communicator chirped. Admiral's face appeared on the screen, older and more tired than she remembered seeing him. You are being activated for immediate deployment. Take your battle group to station and reinforce the defense fleet. You ship out in 4 hours. Understood, sir, she hesitated. Admiral, what are we facing? Her father's expression darkened. Something we are not prepared for. They adapt to our tactics within minutes. Every weapon we use against them becomes less effective as they learn to counter it. We need time to develop new strategies, and you need to buy us that time. Hold the line as long as possible. The transmission ended. Stood alone in her command center, looking at the tactical display and calculating probabilities she did not like. This was not a standard deployment. This was a suicide mission disguised as a reinforcement order. She began issuing commands, calling her crew to active duty, coordinating with Fleet Command for supply transfers and weapons. Her battle group consisted of her flagship, the Crimson Talon, plus 12 escort cruisers and support vessels. Against hundreds of ships, it would not be enough. But orders were orders. She was in the middle of reviewing crew assignments when appeared in the doorway of the command center. He was carrying a small bag and wearing the plain gray uniform that human auxiliaries wore when assigned to military vessels. "Commander," he said quietly, "I am requesting permission to join your deployment." Stared at him. "Absolutely not. This is a combat mission. You are a civilian contractor assigned to household maintenance, not military operations. I have engineering qualifications that could be useful on a warship. My personnel file lists me as certified for shipboard systems maintenance and tactical computer operations." He met her eyes with that same calm expression he had shown at the banquet. "I can help." "No," turned back to her displays. "You will remain here where it is safe. This is not a discussion." He almost never used her name without her rank. The sound of it made her pause. "I know what this mission is. I heard your father's transmission. You are going to die slowly instead of quickly, buying time for evacuation protocols. If that is true, I should be there." She wanted to argue, but something in his voice stopped her. Not fear, not false bravery, just a simple statement of fact and a request to stand beside her when it mattered. "Engineering section," she said finally. "Stay out of combat areas. Follow all safety protocols." And she looked at him directly. "If I give an evacuation order, you take it. Understood?" "Understood, Commander." The journey to station took 18 hours at maximum burn. Spent the time reviewing everything the Confederation knew about tactics, which turned out to be almost nothing useful. The historical records were centuries old and focused mostly on descriptions of their bioships, massive organic vessels that could regenerate damage and adapt their weapon systems in real time. The records mentioned the hive mind, but provided no details about how it functioned or how to disrupt it. They arrived to find a graveyard. The defense line had consisted of 80 warships plus orbital defense platforms and minefields. Now there were perhaps 30 vessels still operational, many of them damaged. The defense platforms were dark, their systems offline or destroyed. And surrounding everything like a living wall of flesh and chitin were had seen many types of ships during her career. Sleek cruisers, boxy human cargo haulers, elegant alien designs from a dozen species. Nothing had prepared her for the bioships. They moved like predators, sliding through space with purpose and terrible grace. Their hulls pulsed with bioluminescent patterns that seemed to communicate across the swarm. They were beautiful and horrifying. "All ships battle formation Theta 7, commanded, settling into her command chair aboard the Crimson Talon. "Target the closest bioship cluster and prepare to fire on my mark." The battle began badly and got worse. They absorbed the first volley of missiles and energy weapons with minimal damage. Their hulls secreted some kind of reactive armor that neutralized explosions and dispersed heat. When switched to kinetic rounds, the bioships simply moved, their reaction time impossibly fast. Within 10 minutes, she had lost 2 escort cruisers and had barely slowed down. "They are reading our targeting computers," her weapons officer reported. "They know what we are going to shoot at before we fire." "Switch to manual targeting," ordered. "Random firing patterns, no computer assistance." It helped, but not enough. They kept coming, wave after wave, and for every bioship the Confederation destroyed, 2 more appeared to take its place. Watched her tactical display and saw the inevitable conclusion approaching. Her battle group would last another hour at most. The entire defense fleet perhaps 3 hours beyond that. Then they would break through to the inner systems and millions would die. A proximity alert flashed. 3 bioships had broken through the defensive line and were heading directly for the Crimson Talon. Opened her mouth to order evasive maneuvers when a voice cut through the command channel. "Commander, this is..." His voice was steady, almost eerily calm. "I am seeing something in the movement patterns. They are not acting independently. There is a coordination structure." "We know they have a hive mind," snapped, focused on the approaching enemy ships. "That is not helpful information right now." "But I can see the nodes," continued. "In the bioelectric patterns they are emitting. Some ships are controllers, amplifying the hive mind signal. Others are followers. If you target the controllers first, you can create confusion in their formations." Was about to dismiss this when her tactical officer spoke up. "Commander, he might be right. Look at ships Delta 7 and Delta 12. They are positioned at mathematical focal points in the enemy formation. They could be command nodes." She had seconds to decide. Trust the human she barely knew or continue with failing tactics and watch everyone die. "All ships," she said, her voice cutting across every command channel. "Priority targeting on Delta 7 and Delta 12. Concentrated fire, full weapons release. Execute now." The fleet obeyed. Dozens of ships focused all their firepower on the 2 bioships had identified. They tried to compensate, moving to protect their command nodes, but they were a fraction of a second too slow. Both controller ships exploded in bursts of organic matter and biological fluid. And the swarm hesitated. For just a moment the perfect coordination faltered. Bioships drifted out of formation. Attack patterns dissolved into chaos. The hive mind was disrupted, confused by the loss of its controllers. "Again," shouted, "find the next command nodes and destroy them." His voice guided them, identifying controllers with impossible accuracy. The Crimson Talon and her battle group became surgical, precise, tearing apart the command structure 1 node at a time. Other Confederation ships saw what was happening and adapted their tactics, targeting the controllers instead of random targets. The battle turned from a massacre into a fight. 3 hours later, pulling back from the defense line to regroup. They left behind hundreds of destroyed bioships and the shattered remains of Confederation vessels. The defense fleet had survived barely, but they had survived. Sat in her command chair, exhausted, and looked at the casualty reports scrolling across her display. 200,000 dead, but without his intervention, it would have been 2 million. He had saved them. A human cargo pilot turned tactical advisor had accomplished what the entire military command structure could not. She activated the internal comm. "Report to the command deck." He arrived 5 minutes later, still wearing his engineering uniform, his face smudged with grease from working on the ship's systems during combat. He stood at attention, waiting. Studied him, really looked at him for the first time since the wedding ceremony. This quiet human who read military theory books, who upgraded her computers without asking, who saw patterns in alien hive minds that trained tacticians missed. "How did you know?" she asked quietly. "How did you see what they were doing?" Was silent for a moment. "I read a lot," he said finally. history, biology, mathematics. They are not the first hive-mind species humans have encountered in our history, just the largest. Their coordination patterns follow specific mathematical principles. Once I recognized those principles, finding the command nodes was just pattern recognition. Just pattern recognition, repeated. She laughed, a short, bitter sound. You just saved 12,000 lives with pattern recognition. He said nothing, just met her eyes with that same calm expression. Stood and walked to the main viewport looking out at the aftermath of battle. Thank you, she said, and meant it. I was wrong about you, about what you are capable of. Most people are, he said quietly. She turned to look at him. What does that mean? It means humans have learned to be underestimated, said. It makes us more useful when it matters. Before could respond, the proximity alarms began screaming again. She spun toward the tactical display and felt her heart sink. More bioships were emerging from deep space. Not hundreds this time. Thousands. The real invasion had just begun. They came like a tide that never stopped rising. 3 systems fell in the first week. 7 more in the second. The Confederation military, which had maintained galactic peace for 600 years, was being torn apart by an enemy that learned from every defeat and adapted to every weapon. Its victory yet became famous, but not in the way she had hoped. Fleet Command studied her battle reports and credited the tactical breakthrough to unconventional analysis methods, without mentioning by name. When pressed during a strategic briefing, told the truth. A human had identified the command structure. A human had saved the defense line. The reaction was immediate and ugly. Admiral called her to his office 3 days after the briefing. He did not invite her to sit. You have created a political disaster, he said, his voice cold. Half the High Council is demanding your resignation. They say you have elevated a human above his station, that you are undermining the racial hierarchy that keeps the Confederation stable. I told the truth, said. Identified enemy weaknesses that our own tactical computers missed. He saved thousands of lives. How is acknowledging that a disaster? Because it suggests humans might be more valuable than we have claimed they are, her father said. And if humans are valuable, then other inferior species might question their own positions. The entire social structure of the empire is built on defined hierarchy. You are threatening that structure. So we should lie, pretend the victories are ours alone, even when they are not. Admiral looked at her with something like pity. Yes, that is exactly what you should do, for the good of the empire, for your career, for everything we have built. Distance yourself from the human. Issue a statement saying you develop the tactics independently. This can still be contained. Thought about standing calmly in her command center while bioships attacked from all sides, his voice steady as he guided her through the chaos. She thought about the 12,000 soldiers who were alive because he saw patterns others could not. No, she said. Her father's expression hardened. Do not throw away your future for a human, for a marriage that means nothing. It is not about the marriage, said, though she was no longer entirely sure that was true. It is about not lying to pretend we are superior when we are not. Earned credit for what he did. I will not take that from him. Then you will face the consequences. Admiral turned away from her, looking out his office window at the capital city below. High Command is reassigning you. There is a mission they need undertaken. Deep penetration into occupied space. Intelligence gathering on their staging operations. You will lead a small strike force. Volunteers only. Understood immediately. This was not a mission. This was an execution disguised as a deployment. They expected her to fail, to die in enemy territory, solving their political problem without a messy court-martial. When do I leave? She asked. 2 days. Assemble your team and prepare for deep space operations. Dismissed, Commander. Returned to her family estate and found in the maintenance bay, working on one of her shuttles. He looked up when she entered, reading something in her expression. What happened? She told him everything. The political backlash, her father's demand that she lie, the suicide mission disguised as a reassignment. Listened without interrupting, his hands still working on the shuttle's engine systems even as he absorbed the information. "You should have lied," he said when she finished. "I know. You threw away your career for a human you barely know." "I know." Set down his tools and looked at her directly. Why? Had been asking herself the same question. The easy answer was principle, honor, truth. But standing in the maintenance bay with this quiet human who had saved thousands of lives without asking for recognition, she realized there was more to it than that. She had spent her entire life believing in superiority, in the natural order that placed her species at the top and humans near the bottom, and then had proven that belief wrong in the most undeniable way possible. "Because you were better than us," she said finally. "In that battle when it mattered most, a human was better than the entire tactical command, and I refuse to lie about that." Studied her face for a long moment, then he nodded slowly. "I am volunteering for your mission." "No, this is a suicide run. High Command expects us to fail." "Then you will need every advantage you can get." He turned back to the shuttle, resuming his work on the engine. "Besides, we are married. Where you go, I go. Is that not how it works?" "That is not how our marriage works," said. "We made that clear from the beginning." "Maybe things have changed," said quietly. Wanted to argue, but she found she had no good counter-argument. Things had changed. She no longer saw as a duty assignment or a political burden. She saw him as, what? A partner, an ally, something more complicated than she had words for. She left the maintenance bay without answering and went to assemble her strike team. The mission briefing was simple and brutal. They had established a staging world deep in occupied territory, a planet where they were processing captured populations into biomass to fuel their invasion fleets. His team would infiltrate the planet, gather intelligence on biological processes and command structures, then extract with whatever data they could collect. High Command estimated the mission had a 12% survival probability. 8 soldiers volunteered, all of them young officers who had served under and trusted her completely. Volunteered, and to his surprise, 4 more humans volunteered as well. Engineers and technical specialists who had heard what did and wanted to serve alongside him. They departed 3 days later aboard a stealth ship designed for deep space infiltration. The journey took 2 weeks, navigating through controlled space using jump routes that barely registered on scanners. They watched from long range as entire systems burned, consuming everything in their path. The staging world was a nightmare made real. It had once been a Confederation colony, home to 4 million citizens from a dozen species. Now it was a processing center. From orbit, could see massive organic structures growing across the planet's surface, pulsing with bioluminescent light. Bioships descended in steady streams, depositing captured prisoners who disappeared into the structures and never emerged. They landed in the ruins of what had been the colony's capital city. The buildings were still intact but empty, their populations already processed. The team moved through silent streets while organisms moved overhead, massive creatures that paid no attention to the small figures below. They found a research facility that had been partially converted by its laboratories now growing alien organic matter. Led the technical team inside and the soldiers established a perimeter. They had 48 hours before their stealth window closed, and they would need to attempt extraction. On the second day, they found them. Watched on tactical displays as bioships began landing around their position. Thousands of organisms swarming toward the facility. They had been detected somehow, the hive mind recognizing an anomaly in its processing center. "We are leaving," ordered, "everyone to the ship now." But was still in the laboratory studying something he had found in the organic samples. "Wait," he said through the comm. "I am seeing something important. The hive mind, it operates on quantum neural frequencies, and those frequencies, they match patterns in human consciousness. We do not have time for this. They are drawn to humans specifically, continued, his voice intense. That is why they attacked the Confederation. That is why they process so many humans. Our minds create dissonance in their collective. We disrupt them just by existing. The facility shook as something massive landed on the roof. Could hear clicking sounds, thousands of legs moving across the building's exterior. Move now. He emerged from the laboratory carrying a sealed container of organic matter. The rest of the team was already falling back toward their ship, fighting running battles with organisms that were pouring into the facility. Counted heads as they retreated. 2 soldiers down. 1 human engineer missing. They were being slaughtered. They made it to the ship and launched under fire, bioships pursuing as they climbed toward orbit. The stealth systems were damaged, their jump drive running at 60% efficiency. They had perhaps 3 hours before they caught them. In the ship's laboratory, worked frantically with the samples while trying to find them an escape route that did not exist. The rest of the team treated wounded and prepared for a final stand they all knew was coming. I can disrupt them, said suddenly. Turned from the navigation console. What? The hive mind. If I can create enough dissonance in their quantum neural network, I can break their coordination, at least locally. He looked up from his work, and there was something in his eyes that frightened her. But it requires direct interface. I would need to connect my consciousness to their network using the neural bridge technology we found in the facility. That would kill you, said. Probably, agreed. But it would give the rest of you time to escape, and it would provide data on neural structures that could help develop weapons against them. No. We are already dead. This way, at least our deaths mean something. The other humans in the team were listening. One of them, a young woman named, stepped forward. If connects, he will need amplification. The human neural network is designed for parallel processing. If we all connect, we could multiply the dissonance effect. You would all die, said. We are all going to die anyway, said quietly. This way we hurt them first. Looked at her team, at the humans who were calmly discussing their own execution as if it were a minor tactical decision. She wanted to order them to stop, to find another way, but she knew there was no other way. They were closing in and nothing could stop them. Except possibly this. No, she said again, but her voice was weaker. Walked over to her close enough that only she could hear. Remember when you asked me at the banquet how humans face death without fear? This is how. We make it mean something. We make it count. Looked at him, this human she had married out of duty and learned to respect through fire, and realized with absolute clarity that she could not watch him die. Not like this. Not for her. But he was already moving toward the neural bridge equipment, and the other humans were following him, and somewhere deep in space they were coming, and there was no time left for anything except courage. Link the system, said, all of us together, and he looked back at her one last time. Thank you for treating me like I mattered. Then he placed the neural connector against his temple, and the other humans did the same, and could only watch as the human she had underestimated, dismissed, and finally come to care for prepared to burn himself out like a star going nova, all to save people who had spent centuries telling his species they were worthless. The connection activated. His body went rigid as alien consciousness flooded into his mind. Around him, the other humans convulsed, their nervous systems overloading, and stood frozen, unable to move, unable to look away, as something impossible began to happen. The moment connected to the neural bridge, every display in the ship went white. Not the white of malfunction or system failure, but a pure, absolute brightness that should not have been possible from standard screens. Shielded her eyes, hearing the soldiers cry out in surprise and fear. When her vision cleared, she saw standing in the center of the laboratory, still connected to the neural bridge by thin cables that glowed with impossible light. His eyes were open but entirely white, no pupil or iris visible. The other humans had collapsed around him, their bodies motionless, their minds already consumed by the connection, but remained standing. The ship's sensors began screaming alerts. The bioships that had been pursuing them were breaking formation, their coordinated attack patterns dissolving into chaos. Pulled up the tactical display and watched in disbelief as dozens of vessels simply stopped moving, hanging motionless in space like insects frozen in amber. "What is happening?" asked from the pilot station, his voice shaking. Had no answer. She turned back to, watching energy bleed from his eyes like tears of light. His neural implants were burning white-hot, small wisps of smoke rising from the connection points. By every medical reading, he should have been dead. His brain activity was off every scale. His consciousness was operating at levels that should not have been biologically possible. And through the ship's sensors, could see the effect spreading. The organisms for hundreds of kilometers around them were convulsing, their hive-mind connection severed by whatever was doing. Bioships were dying in space, their organic systems failing as the neural network that sustained them was torn apart. "He is winning," one of the soldiers whispered. "A human is destroying the—" But the cost was visible. His body was breaking down, his biological systems failing under the impossible strain of channeling consciousness at quantum levels. Blood ran from his nose, his ears. His skin had taken on a strange, translucent quality, as if he was becoming something less solid, less real. Stepped toward him, one hand reaching out. "You have to stop. You have done enough. Please disconnect." His head turned toward her, those white eyes fixing on her face. When he spoke, his voice echoed strangely, as if multiple versions of him were speaking at once. "I can see them. I can see everything. The entire hive mind spread across 1,000 systems. It is beautiful and terrible and so very hungry. You are dying." "I know," he smiled, and there was something serene in that expression despite the blood running down his face. "But I am taking them with me. Watch." The ship's sensors showed a shockwave expanding from their position, invisible but devastating. Everywhere it touched, organisms simply stopped. Their bioships went dark. Their neural connections failed. The hive mind that had threatened to consume the galaxy was being methodically dismantled by one human consciousness amplified beyond human limits. Watched the tactical display and realized she was witnessing something that would be remembered for thousands of years. The moment a human became more than human. The moment one individual consciousness proved stronger than a collective that spanned stars. But was paying for every second of it. His body was failing, the neural connections burning through his organic systems. He had perhaps minutes before complete biological collapse. Could see it in her medical readouts, could see the countdown to his death displayed in cold numbers. She should have let him go. Let him complete what he had started, die as a hero who saved millions. That would have been the logical choice, the military choice, but was discovering that logic had limits and she had already crossed them. "Disconnect him," she ordered, "now." "Commander, if we disconnect the neural bridge while he is still linked to the hive mind, the feedback could kill him instantly," protested. "He is already dying. At least give him a chance." Moved to the neural bridge controls herself, her hands shaking as she began the disconnection sequence. His white eyes focused on her. "Do not, I am not finished." "Yes, you are." Initiated the emergency disconnect, watching the cables retract from his neural implants. For a moment, his entire body went rigid, every muscle locked. The light in his eyes flared so bright she had to look away. Then he collapsed. Caught him before he hit the floor, her arms wrapping around his too light body. He weighed almost nothing, as if the connection had burned away mass along with everything else. His eyes were closed now, his breathing shallow and irregular, but he was breathing. He was alive. "Get us to the nearest Confederation medical facility," ordered. "Maximum speed. I do not care if we burn out the engines." The journey back to civilized space took 8 hours at emergency velocity. During that time, sat beside in the medical bay, monitoring his vital signs and refusing to leave. The other humans were dead, their minds completely burned out by the neural connection. They had given everything to Amplify's attack, and it had cost them everything. But clung to life with the same stubborn determination he had shown when facing Commander at the banquet. His consciousness was damaged, fractured across quantum levels that medical science barely understood. He existed partially in normal space and partially in something else, something the doctors did not have words for. They reached the medical facility at Outpost 17, a Confederation hospital ship equipped for trauma surgery and neural reconstruction. Was rushed to intensive care while stood in the corridor, covered in his blood, and waited. Admiral arrived 6 hours later. He found still in the corridor, still covered in blood, staring at the closed door of the intensive care unit. "Commander," he said formally, "I have read the mission reports. What your team accomplished is unprecedented. The fleet in that entire sector has gone dark, billions of organisms neutralized by a single consciousness attack. Fleet Command wants to know how this was done." "A human did it," said, not looking at him. "The human you wanted me to distance myself from. The human High Command hoped would die on your suicide mission. He destroyed a staging operation and crippled their hive mind across dozens of systems, and it nearly killed him." Her father was silent for a long moment. "Is he going to survive?" "I do not know. Regardless of what happens to him, you should know that High Command is requesting your presence for a strategic briefing. They want to understand the neural bridge weapon and discuss implementation across the fleet. This could change the entire war. I am not leaving until I know he is going to live. He is a human, a valuable asset now certainly, but still." "He is my husband," interrupted, and realized as she said it that she meant it in ways she had never meant it before. "He is the person who saved my life and the lives of my crew. He is the soldier who did what your entire military command structure could not do, and I am not leaving him." Admiral looked at his daughter, seeing something in her expression that made him pause. "You care for him?" "Yes." "This changes everything. If you elevate a human to the status of true partner, if you treat this marriage as real, the political implications—" "I do not care about political implications anymore," said. "I care about whether the bravest person I have ever met is going to survive. Everything else is secondary." Her father studied her for a moment longer, then nodded slowly. "I will inform High Command you are unavailable for briefings until further notice, but you should understand what you are choosing. This path will have consequences. For you, for humans, for the entire social structure of the Confederation." "Good," said. "The social structure is broken anyway. Proved that. If it takes consequences to fix it, then bring the consequences." Admiral left without another word, returned to her vigil outside the intensive care unit, waiting. 3 days later, opened his eyes. Was beside him immediately, relief flooding through her so intensely it felt like physical pain. "You are awake." "I am something," said, his voice hoarse. "Not sure awake is the right word." He tried to sit up and winced. "Everything hurts." "You nearly died. You burned out half your neural pathways connecting to the hive mind. The doctors say you should not have survived." "Humans are hard to kill," said. Then he focused on her face, really looked at her for the first time. "You are crying." Touched her face and realized he was right. She had not cried since she was a child at the military academy. "I thought I had lost you." "You barely knew me." "I know you better than I have known anyone," said, and it was true. She knew his courage, his intelligence, his impossible calm under pressure. She knew that he would sacrifice himself without hesitation to save others. She knew that he was worth more than every officer who had dismissed him combined. Reached up slowly, his hand shaking, and touched her face. His fingers came away wet with tears. I need to tell you something. The neural connection changed me. I can still feel it, the hive mind. Echoes of it in my consciousness. I am not completely human anymore. I do not know what I am. You are, said simply. That is enough. He studied her face, searching for something. You mean that? Yes. The marriage was supposed to be political theater, duty, nothing real. Plans change, said. People change, I changed. She took his hand carefully, mindful of the medical equipment still attached to him. When I watched you connect to that neural bridge when I thought I was going to lose you, I realized something. This marriage might have started as duty, but it has become something else, at least for me. Was quiet for a long moment. Then he smiled, a real smile that reached his damaged eyes. For me too. From the beginning, actually. I just did not think you would ever see me as anything but a duty assignment. I was an idiot. You were, said gently. You were taught your entire life that humans were inferior. It took a war to prove otherwise. Outside the medical bay, alarms began sounding. Pulled up a status display and felt her brief moment of peace evaporate. More bioships were appearing on long-range sensors, bigger fleets than before, converging on Confederation core systems. The war was not over, had dealt them a devastating blow, but they were adapting, as they always adapted. And now they knew humans were a threat to their hive mind. Now they were coming for Earth. Looked at this human who had nearly died to save people who had spent centuries oppressing his species. Can you do it again? Connect to the hive mind and disrupt them? Maybe, said, but not like this. Not as one person. If I had more humans, more consciousness to amplify the effect, he trailed off, his damaged mind working through tactical problems. If I had an entire fleet of humans all willing to connect, we could create a disruption that spans the entire network. We could end this war. That would require convincing thousands of humans to potentially die for the Confederation, said. The same Confederation that has treated them as second-class citizens for centuries. I know, said quietly, but they will do it anyway, because that is what humans do. We survive, we sacrifice. We refuse to surrender even when the universe tells us we should. He met her eyes. You are about to see what humanity really is, and it is going to terrify you. Somewhere far away, the swarms were gathering for their final assault on human space, on Earth itself, and realized that everything she had witnessed so far, all the impossible things had accomplished, were just the beginning. She was about to see a human truly ascend. The news reached Earth 3 days before the did. Long-range sensors detected the swarm moving through space like a living wall of death, 3,000 bioships converging on humanity's home system. Every projection showed the same result: extinction, complete and total. The High Command issued evacuation orders for Earth's orbital stations and offered transport off-planet for essential personnel. It was a kind gesture that fooled no one. There were 8 billion humans on Earth and in the solar system's colonies. They could evacuate perhaps 10,000. The rest would face the alone. Stood in the observation deck of the hospital ship and watched the tactical displays showing the approaching doom. Beside her, leaned heavily on a support rail, his body still recovering from the neural bridge damage. He should have been in bed. Instead, he stared at the display showing Earth, his, and the death sentence approaching it. I am going back, he said quietly. You can barely walk. Your neural pathways are still damaged. Connecting to another bridge would kill you instantly. Then I die on Earth instead of in a hospital, straightened, wincing at the pain. My people are going to face extinction. I will not watch it from orbit. Had known he would say this. Had known it from the moment she saw the first reports of the heading toward Earth. Then, I am coming with you. No. We have already had this argument. Where you go, I go. That is how marriage works, remember. He looked at her, his damaged eyes searching her face. If you go to Earth now, they will consider it desertion. Your father, your career, your entire life will be forfeit. My career is already over, said. High Command considers me a traitor for elevating a human. My father has not spoken to me in weeks. There is nothing left for me with the Empire, but there is something here with you. So I am staying. Before could argue further, the hospital ship's communication system activated. A voice did not recognize came through on an open channel. This is Captain of the freighter Wandering Star. We are inbound to Earth with 300 humans who served in the Confederation military. We heard what did at the staging world. We are volunteering for whatever comes next. Another voice followed immediately. This is Captain Bora of the colony ship New Horizon. We are carrying 8,000 civilians and militia from the outer colonies. We are coming to Earth. More voices, more ships. Within an hour, the communication channels were flooded with humans announcing their arrival. Fleet personnel, civilian pilots, colony defense forces, merchant crews. They came in ships that should not have been capable of military operations, flying vessels held together by repairs and desperate hope. They came because they were human, and humans did not surrender there without a fight. Listened to the transmissions with an expression could not quite read. They are going to die, he said quietly. All of them. Even with the neural bridge technology, we cannot disrupt 3,000 ships. The numbers are impossible. Then we change the numbers, said. She activated her own communication system, broadcasting on Confederation military frequencies. This is Commander to all vessels in range. Earth is about to face the largest attack in the war. The humans are going to defend there with everything they have. I am requesting any ships willing to stand with them to rendezvous at Earth orbit immediately. Silence answered her. For a long moment thought no one would respond. Then a familiar voice came through the channel. This is Lieutenant aboard the Crimson Talon. We are setting course for Earth now. The crew voted unanimously. If is fighting, we are fighting beside him. More ships responded. Not many. Perhaps 30 vessels out of the thousands in the Confederation fleet. But they came, commanded by officers who had fought at, who had seen what a human could accomplish when given the chance. Watch the tactical display update as ships converged on Earth. 200 human vessels, 30 warships. Against 3,000 bioships, it was still suicide, but it was suicide with company. We need a plan, he said. They made their plans in the main cargo bay of the Wandering Star, a converted freighter that now served as the flagship of Earth's desperate defense fleet. The space was packed with humans, and representatives from 3 other species who had decided that if humanity was making a final stand, they wanted to be part of it. Stood at the center, still weak from his injuries but steady as he explained the neural bridge weapon. The hive mind operates on quantum frequencies. Human consciousness creates dissonance in those frequencies. If we can connect enough humans to the bridge simultaneously, we can create a disruption wave that spans their entire network. How many humans would need to connect? Someone asked. Thousands, tens of thousands ideally, all at once in coordinated networks across the fleet. Paused. And most of them will die. The neural feedback burns out biological systems. I survived through luck and circumstances I still do not understand. Most people will not. The cargo bay fell silent. Then a young woman stepped forward, recognized her as one of the engineers from the Staging World mission who had survived. I will connect. My brother died on one of the colony worlds the Consumed. If there is a chance to stop them, I am taking it. Another human stepped forward. Then another. Within minutes, thousands of hands were raised across the cargo bay and on video feeds from other ships. Humans volunteering to burn out their minds to save Earth. Watched it happen and felt something shift in her understanding of what humans were. Not inferior, not second class, something else entirely. Something that would sacrifice everything without being asked, without expecting reward, simply because it was right. We will need command nodes, said, his voice thick with emotion. Humans with strong neural resilience to serve as amplifiers for the others. I can be one. We will need at least 20 more. 23 humans with prior neural implant experience volunteered immediately. They began preparing the neural bridges, modified technology scavenged from wrecks and combined with human medical equipment. It was improvised, dangerous, and completely unproven at this scale. It was also the only chance they had. They arrived 72 hours later. The bioships emerged from jump space in perfect formation, a living wall that stretched across Earth's orbital space. They paused for a moment as if the hive mind was assessing the pitiful fleet arranged against it. 230 vessels against 3,000. It was not even a battle, it was an execution. Stood on the bridge of the Wandering Star, now designated as the human command ship, was in the Neural Coordination Center below, already connected to the first bridge network. Around Earth, thousands of humans were doing the same, linking their consciousness to the improvised weapon that might save them or might simply kill them faster. All ships, transmitted, hold formation, do not engage until the neural bridges are fully synchronized, needs time. They did not wait. They came forward in a coordinated rush, bioships accelerating toward the human fleet with clear intent. Death was coming, and there was nothing anyone could do to stop it. Except, in the Neural Coordination Center, surrounded by 23 other humans who served as his command network, felt the connections activate one by one. Thousands of human minds linking together, creating a web of consciousness that spanned the entire fleet. He could feel each one, their fear and courage and determination all bleeding together into something larger than any individual. He reached out through the quantum frequencies and touched the hive mind. It was vast, ancient, hungry beyond human comprehension. It had consumed 1,000 species across 1,000,000 years. It had refined eating entire civilizations into a precise science, and it recognized immediately as the consciousness that had wounded it at the staging world. The hive mind attacked. Pain exploded through neurons, the collective will of billions of organisms trying to burn out his individual consciousness. Around him, humans began screaming as the feedback hit them. Medical monitors showed neural pathways collapsing, biological systems failing under the assault. But had learned something at the staging world, something they did not understand about humans. They did not break easily, and when they did break, they took their enemies with them. He stopped defending and attacked instead. His consciousness, amplified by thousands of connected humans, tore into the quantum network like a blade. He found their command structures and shattered them. He located their coordination nodes and burned them out. He spread through their hive mind like a virus, disrupting every frequency, breaking every connection. And unlike at the staging world, this time he was not alone. Thousands of humans were feeding him their strength, their will, their absolute refusal to let Earth fall. Each one burned out quickly, their minds consumed by the effort, but before they died they gave everything to the weapon he had become. On the bridge, watched the impossible happen for the second time. The bioships began to falter, their perfect coordination dissolving. Ships drifted out of formation. Attack patterns collapsed. The hive mind was breaking. But the cost was devastating. The medical monitors showing human neural activity were going dark one by one as people died in their connection chairs. Hundreds, thousands, all of them burning out their minds to give enough power to hold the connection. In the neural center felt each death like a hammer blow. But he could not stop, could not grieve, could only push forward. His own consciousness was fracturing, spreading across quantum levels that no human was meant to touch. He was becoming something else, something beyond flesh and thought. He was becoming a weapon, a god of war carved from human sacrifice and unbreakable determination. Saw the moment it happened. His body went rigid in the neural chair, light bleeding from every implant connection. The displays around him showed his brain activity spiking beyond measurable levels. His consciousness was not just disrupting the anymore. It was dominating them, taking control of their hive mind and turning it against itself. For 17 seconds, existed in a state beyond human understanding. His mind expanded to touch every organism within 20 light hours of Earth. He felt their hunger, their ancient purpose, their complete inability to understand the concept of mercy or restraint, and he showed them what those concepts meant by forcing their own hive mind to shut down. 3,000 bioships went dark simultaneously. Their biological systems stopped functioning. Their neural networks collapsed into static. The massive swarm that had come to consume Earth simply died. His consciousness collapsed back into his body, and he screamed, a sound of absolute agony that echoed through the ship's internal systems. Was moving before she realized it, running from the bridge to the neural center. She found him still strapped to the connection chair, blood running from his eyes and nose and ears. The other command network humans were dead, their minds completely burned out. Alone remained alive, though his neural readings were catastrophic. Disconnect him, ordered. Emergency shutdown now. The technicians scrambled to comply, pulling connections and shutting down the neural bridge systems. His body went limp as the connections released, his head lolling forward. Caught him, holding his too light body close. Stay with me, you did it, Earth is safe. You saved everyone, just stay with me. His eyes opened, barely focused. I am here. Did we win? Yes, you won, you saved Earth, you saved humanity. He smiled, blood on his teeth. Good, that is good. His eyes started to close. I am very tired. I know, but you have to stay awake, just a little longer. Was crying again, tears falling on his face. Please, I just found you, you cannot leave now. Not leaving, he murmured, just resting, finally resting. Medical teams arrived, pulling from her arms and rushing him to intensive care. Tried to follow, but someone held her back. She stood in the neural center surrounded by the bodies of humans who had given everything, and she finally understood what it meant when he said she was about to see what humanity really was. She had witnessed humans ascend, not through technology or genetic modification, but through pure sacrifice, through the willingness to burn themselves out like stars to light the way for others. 3 days later, opened his eyes in the medical bay, was beside him as she had been every moment since the battle. She looked exhausted, her military uniform wrinkled and stained. You look terrible, said, his voice hoarse. Laughed, the sound somewhere between relief and hysteria. You died twice during surgery. Your neural pathways are permanently altered. You exist partially in quantum space now. The doctors say you should not be conscious, much less speaking. Humans are hard to kill, said again. Then more seriously, how many did we lose? 12,000 humans died in the neural bridges, another 4,000 in the conventional fighting. Took his hand carefully. You saved 8 billion. The super swarm is destroyed. The hive mind is catatonic across half the galaxy. You ended the war. He was quiet for a long moment. Did I, or did 12,000 humans end it together? Both, said, but you were the one who held it together. You were the battle deity they needed. I was just a cargo pilot who read too many books. Looked at her with eyes that were still partly white, still touched by the quantum realm. What happens now? Now the galaxy changes, said. The empire is collapsing. 37 species declared independence in the last week. Humans are not second class anymore. No one who saw what you did could ever think that again. She squeezed his hand gently. And you and I figure out what our marriage means when it is not duty anymore. What do you want it to mean? Thought about the cold wedding ceremony, about the months of distance and dismissal, about the long journey from duty to something deeper. I want it to mean everything. I want to stay with you, learn about you, understand what made you into the person who could save billions without asking for anything in return. I want to be worthy of you. "You already are," said softly. "You were the one who refused to lie about what I did. You were the one who stood with humanity when your own people abandoned them. You married me out of duty, but you fought beside me out of choice. That means everything." She leaned forward and kissed him, gently, mindful of his injuries. When she pulled back, she saw tears on his face too. "So what do we do now?" she asked. Looked toward the viewport where Earth hung in space, blue and beautiful and saved. "We rebuild. We create something better than what came before. We prove that the hierarchy was always a lie and that every species deserves respect. And we do it together." Together, agreed. Outside, the galaxy was changing. The Confederation was falling apart. New alliances were forming. Humans who had been dismissed for centuries were suddenly leading diplomatic missions and military operations. The old order was dying, burned away by the same fire that had consumed the... And at the center of it all, a human cargo pilot and a commander who had married out of duty but found love in the crucible of war. They would spend the rest of their lives helping to build something new, something better. Because humans refused to surrender, even when the universe demanded it. And sometimes that refusal changed everything. 5 years later, stood in the same cargo bay where humans had volunteered to die, now converted into a memorial hall. Names covered the walls. 12,000 humans who had connected to the neural bridges and never woke up. Heroes who saved their species through sacrifice. Stood beside her, his arm around her waist. He walked with a cane now, his body permanently damaged by what he had done. But he was alive, and that was more than anyone had expected. "Do you regret it?" asked quietly. "Everything you sacrificed?" Looked at the names on the walls, at the visitors who came daily to pay respects. "I regret the cost. I regret that so many had to die, but I do not regret standing up when it mattered. That is what humans do. We pay the price so others do not have to." "The galaxy calls you the battle deity," said. "They have shrines to you on 17 worlds. They tell stories about the human who became a god of war." "I was never a god," said. "Just a human who refused to watch his people die. Just a person who believed we deserved better than extinction." Took his hand, this human she had married without caring, fought beside, nearly lost, and learned to love more than she thought possible. "Thank you," she said, "for showing me what I was too blind to see, for proving that worth is not determined by species, for being exactly who you are." Smiled, squeezed her hand, and together they walked through the memorial hall, past the names of heroes, toward whatever future they would build together. Behind them, Earth kept spinning. Humanity kept surviving. And the universe learned what happens when you try to extinguish a species that has been refusing to die for 10,000 years. They ascend. And they take everyone willing to stand with them along for the rise.